What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great day. Before we get into the interview with Jed Shepherd, the writer of Host and many other things coming out, including the video game Ghosts, as you know, we're nearing the end of the Kickstarter campaign for my independent horror film Shelby Oaks. There's only a few days left, and I thank everyone who has gotten on board so far. And as I promised going forward on my channel, I really want to try to get into the weeds of filmmaking, especially on an indie level. And the writer of Host, which was a movie shot entirely on Zoom that still has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, is someone who's going to give you a lot of great advice on writing not just for movies but also for video games. So as a reminder, the link for the Kickstarter is in the description below. There's only a few more days left. Your opportunity to get involved with this Kickstarter is about to go away very soon. Thank you guys so much. Let's get to the interview. Hello, everybody. Today I'm talking with Jed Shepherd. He is the writer of Host, one of the most acclaimed horror films that came out during the pandemic. The film was shot entirely through Zoom, and it was very creative, and I loved it, as pretty much everybody in the horror community did. So we want to talk today about writing craft, and especially crafting scares on the page, and what that really looks like for a writer. And it's really exciting for me to be able to talk to you. First off, I'm a fan. We've talked before, but like, I'm a fan of your work, and you're doing this game Ghosts also, which is really awesome. And so it's a pleasure to have you here to talk about this. I don't get to talk about stuff like this on my channel that much, so it's exciting for me.
Oh, well, it's exciting for me to be here, Chris, and I'm a fan of your channel as well, and the exciting things that you have coming up as well. And yeah, it's great. And I'm also excited to actually look at all the videos behind you and all the films to add to my watch list. Wow.
There's a lot of stuff back here. I'm currently in the basement. I just put the kids down and they're snoozing, so it's like this is a nice little oasis to do some filming, some recording. Over here, for the viewers, over here is anime Blu-ray. It's very organized. It's actually in alphabetical order because I'm crazy.
Wow.
Makes it's very difficult when I get a new Blu-ray, because then it's like everything has to shift.
Yeah.
To put the fucking, it starts with a D. Yeah, like it's
This is serial killer stuff. This is the kind of thing that serial killers do.
I agree. No, I agree. If I wasn't doing YouTube, I'd probably be a murderer.
I don't know if you've seen my VHS collection like on social media, but it is higgledy-piggledy everywhere, just all over the place. It's no rhyme or reason to it. Much like my brain, I think.
I don't really get to talk to too many people about screenwriting as I wish that I could, because I think the perception that a lot of people have is when they see a movie for the first time by a first-time writer or a first-time director is that, well, it's their first big thing. And yeah, kind of, but like, I don't think people realize how long it takes for a creative to get something like that actually accomplished. And it's more than likely never the first thing they ever wrote.
Mm-hmm.
It's never the first thing they ever shot, but it's the first time you're seeing it as an audience member. And so, like, I always think about Mark Hamill. He talked about how when Star Wars came out, the papers were calling him an overnight success.
Yeah.
And he was like, I've been in fucking terrible sitcoms and soap operas for like a decade now and busting my ass to get to this place. So in your perspective, like as someone who might also have been talked about as an overnight success with Host, how long did it take you to get to that point creatively in your career?
I was writing horror scripts when I was in school, like primary school, from the ages of like 5, basically, writing horror scripts. When I was 7, I got a little horror story published in a book. And I got to draw the cover as well. And this book went into school libraries across South London. And so from that point, I knew I was destined for stardom, writing this book with like 200 copies around schools. But genuinely, I've been trying to write stuff and get it made my entire life. And actually, not a lot of people know this unless they kind of dived into my IMDb. The very, very, very first thing I'm credited on is Birdemic 2. I don't know if you've seen the first Birdemic, but it's one of the worst movies ever made. It's at one point it was the very, very bottom of IMDb, along with like the Baby Genius films. Yeah. And so of course I was like, I need to be involved with the sequel to Birdemic. I was obsessed with it for a little while. This was like 2011, 12. And so, yeah, about 10 years ago. And I knew nothing about how to get into films. Absolutely nothing. I didn't know anyone who was in films. But I knew I wanted to be in films because I love films so much. But being a boy from South London with no connections, that is such a pipe dream. So I was working, I think at the time I was working in sales. So I'm quite good at like selling myself. So I basically forced myself onto the project, which became Birdemic 2. I wrote to the director, I wrote to the actors and said, hey, I don't know if you're even thinking about making a sequel to the worst film ever made, Birdemic, but if you are, I want to be involved. I want to help you guys make the second worst film ever made. And so my whole plan, and again, maybe one day, like I'll write an autobiography or something, because this is crazy. I persuaded them to make me a producer on that film. I told them I'll get Birdemic 2 in all these cinemas across Europe. When I named the cinemas, I'll get you into this festival, this festival. I had absolutely no idea how to do it. Not a single jot of an idea. And they said to me, can you really do this? Because we are really thinking about getting this film made. We've got the financing. It's like, yeah, I could definitely do it. And then I had to do it. So I just kind of called up these cinemas. Hey, have you heard of Birdemic? And they're like, yeah, it's an awful movie. I'm like, cool. We're making a second one. Can we be in your cinema when we make it? And weirdly, a lot of cinemas said yes. So I kind of saw it through. I actually got it into festivals, into cinemas. And that was my first taste of Hollywood success, because that film, though it's absolutely terrible, it was shot in Hollywood. So it felt like, and my name is like at the start of the movie as well. So it kind of fit. It was my first taste of success.
That's incredible. I had no idea that was the case.
Oh yeah, but then there was quite a gap between that and Host. It was like a 10-year gap.
I mean, Birdemic 2 didn't help your career?
It didn't. In fact, it almost put me off. It almost put me off being in films. I mean, most of the people involved with it was very nice. The cast are very nice. But just after that, like, I met up with Rob Savage. I met Rob Savage, who's the director of Host and the upcoming Dashcam. And we had an affinity for horror films. He had just done a 30-second comedy film that he'd put onto Twitter at the time. I think that's all he had done. And from that moment, I knew he was someone I could potentially collaborate with, because I think comedy and horror are very similar, because it's all about timing. So I felt like if he could make good comedy, he could make good horror. The Jordan Peele model, really. Right. So we met up, and our ideas kind of were great together. So we made 3 short films over the course of about 8 years, and they all got a lot of attention. Took us to Sundance and a bunch of other amazing film festivals, and kind of kickstarted our career. But obviously, it wasn't till Host came along that people actually paid attention, and it gave us opportunities.
That's amazing, and definitely not. That's an unorthodox journey.
And I was definitely scared at the start of sending things out, emailing friends and family saying, "Hey, can you read this?" Because I was petrified the one person would come back and say, "Oh no, that was awful." So it just stopped me from sending it out. And when someone did say something that was even slightly negative about something I wrote, I would take it personally, like they really offended. But I think the second when I stopped feeling like that, the second I realized this is constructive, this will make the whole thing better if I just listen. And the thing with notes is you don't have to take every single note and apply it to your script. You just kind of get the overall gist of what everyone's saying and think about it. And you don't have to implement it if you don't want to, but it's so important. And also, don't send it to your mum, because your mum's going to always give you great notes back. You need to send it to your ex-girlfriend or something, or like your mortal enemy, because they will give you the real stuff.
Mm-hmm. They will. Yeah, I mean, I've had a similar experience too, in that early on, like, and when I say early on, I mean like, like 6 years ago when I really started to like try to get some stuff written,
Mhm.
I I had a hard time distancing myself from receiving any kind of constructive feedback and thinking, well, I mean, this person just didn't get it or something. Like you
Yeah.
have to really detach yourself from that and realize that people are trying to help you, especially if they're experienced and they've read a lot of scripts and they can look at it and be like, okay, look, I get what you're going for, but like someone is going to stop reading this within the first 3 pages because of this, and this. I definitely noticed a shift in myself when I started to really just look at people's feedback and kind of gather a consensus and be like, okay, I have 10 people who just read this. One person had an issue with this. Nine of them didn't. It's probably okay. That
Yeah.
might have just been like a personal preference,
Mhm.
and that'll happen too. I mean, we all have our own little biases and stuff, but like if all of them sort of pinpoint one specific thing, all
Yeah.
right, I might have to look at that again. But also something you mentioned was like um the specificity of a note, and I was thinking about the phrase the note within the note.
Mhm.
You hear that a lot sometimes, and essentially, like for anyone listening who doesn't know what that means, is that you might get a specific criticism on a piece of your work, and maybe like as you think about it, you're like, well, that just makes no fucking sense. But it still was a problem for this person. So what
Mhm.
is behind their note? Like, so look at your script from like a full like 100% perspective and be like, okay, if they had an issue with page 58 and I don't really get why, is there something else I'm not thinking about that could address that problem on page
Mhm.
27? Like, could I
Yeah.
change something on page 27 that fixes page 58 without having to change 58?
And I was thinking, if writers get shitty about notes they're getting, just imagine what it's going to be like when you've made the film and the people on the internet, in the comments section on YouTube and on Bloody Disgusting and stuff, and on Twitter, just the vitriol you'll get, and
Hmm.
some of that could have been fixed in the note stage
Yeah.
in the second draft.
If you get particularly strong feedback, positively or negatively, but let's focus on negatively, from a writer or from a person who's just giving you advice, and your reaction is immediately confrontational,
Yeah,
you're not going to survive the studio system,
correct.
because these people, they're going to pinpoint every potentiality that could ever be wrong with anything. You could submit a script and get a 9 on the blacklist and then show it to somebody at 20th Century Studios or whatever, Disney, I guess now, and they
Yeah.
might have, that what's with this paragraph here on page 12. Like, they're going to be so specific that it's good to just get used to that. It's a little demoralizing when you like write something and you sort of give it to somebody, and then you're basically sort of like giving them a piece of your soul, and you
Yeah.
notice that they are going to pretty much dissect it like a frog. Um,
Hmm.
but it happens, and it's part of the game, I guess, and you just kind of have to get used to it.
Yeah, and like one of the things I learned very early on is don't read reviews. It doesn't matter how success. Like Host was pretty much universally loved. It's still 100% of Rotten Tomatoes. Cool, but you are going to get bad
Yeah.
reviews. There are going to be some bad reviews out there from the general public. If you go into IMDb, if you go into
Mhm.
Letterboxd, and you just have to train yourself. As soon as you see that 1 star, you just don't read the rest because it's going to
Yeah.
make you second guess yourself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Especially ones, because like very rarely does a filmmaker actually make a 1-star movie?
you've
Like,
seen Birdemic
if
2,
you
though,
want to
right?
be a well, I said rarely, not never.
Okay,
Um,
good.
you know, I think that like in general though, like most people who do get to a point where they're making something really substantial,
Hmm.
there's some talent there in some capacity. Of course, people can go onto my YouTube channel and see what movies I gave an F to, but sometimes that happens. It does. It just completely falls apart, and you get your Batman and Robins or whatever, and it happens. But like, even Batman and Robin has some fun moments. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
It's when you start to bleed into the people who watched 15 minutes of it got pissed that they rented it for $4 and hated it and gave you a 1. And it's like, okay, that doesn't really tell me anything, you know. It's not going to help me.
No, and like one of the things I always think about is we pretty much dropped Host without any fanfare. We didn't have a poster, we didn't have a trailer, because we didn't know what we had. We only finished it the same week it dropped on Shudder. I think the day before, or two days before it dropped on Shudder, that's when we finished it. And the cast and the crew hadn't actually seen it until the day before it dropped on Shudder. It was hours before, in fact. So we didn't know what we had at all. We hadn't seen it put together. But we announced it a couple of weeks before we announced it in the trades that there was a movie coming out, and it was a Zoom film. And the comments on that, which I did read, unfortunately, was just like, why are they making a Zoom movie? This is going to be trash. These people have ruined their careers. I love their shorts, but this is going to be shit. Just constant. But it was actually a little bit of a boost, like weirdly, because I thought, wow, we have zero pressure. Like the bar is so low now. If we just step over the bar, it'll be cool. Which is what I kind of want to do from now on. I kind of want there to be no fanfare, so people's expectations get blown out of the water. If people are expecting something up here and it only gets here, then they're going to be disappointed. But if you set it as low as possible, it's great. And I think that's one of the things that really helped Host, the fact that there was no expectations, because people just thought a Zoom movie would be terrible, and there was no fanfare. We didn't kind of promote it at the start. We didn't have a trailer. We didn't have a trailer until 3 weeks after it was released. And I think that just helped it. The word of mouth, the organic kind of traction you get from people saying, "Hey, did you watch this cool little film? It's only an hour long."
Yeah, and that's something that concerns me considerably, because, you know, I'm approaching the film I'm shooting this summer from the perspective of a first-time filmmaker who will likely have a budget under $1 million, which is honestly nothing. Like, and people don't always realize that. I mean, I am insanely grateful for the support that's been shown to the Kickstarter, but I want people to sort of remember, like, this is still an indie film that's going to be shot in, like, 20 days or something, and we're going to be working our asses off. This is not a Disney movie. This isn't a Hulu movie. It's not a Netflix movie. We've got a couple locations and we're going to try to do our best with it. But like, I'm always trying to manage expectations of, like, when I have to kind of make a video and say, like, we're doing this movie and I need your help. And, that gets people excited, but there's also like, oh my God, Chris Stuckmann, you're going to make your first movie, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, but I just kind of want to make a movie and have a good time and learn. And there's going to be problems with it. There's going to be things that I'm going to look at it and go, oh, I wish I had an extra day to fix that or whatever, But I think it's important for people to remember, like, managing expectations is really helpful, and just don't, like, get wrapped up in, like, what you think a movie could be, and try to just walk in and appreciate what the filmmakers were saying. Like for the Host, for instance, I had never heard about it until I actually remember I was laying in bed. I was thinking about going to sleep, and I have the TV in my room, and I was just scrolling through Shudder, and I saw the banner. I was like, what is this? And I looked it up, and I remember it was like 57 minutes. And I was like, that's weird. And I was like, what's this movie? And so I looked it up, and I saw that people were saying it was really cool. And I actually watched it right then without going to bed.
Nice.
And just watched the whole movie and was just like, hey, this is fucking cool. I need to do a video on this.
It's the beauty of having a movie so short. You can fit it in those moments before sleep. It's like, okay, I'll either watch a YouTube video, a Chris Stuckmann YouTube video, or I can watch Host, a full entire film. That's what I'll do. One of the things that people, especially writers, really kind of thank us for is, like, a story should last as long as it lasts. You shouldn't have to pad it to make up some arbitrary number that was designed in the 1920s. It has to be at least 90 minutes. It has to be. And we had distributors, great distributors, of course, and cinema chains saying, oh, we can't possibly have a movie that's 56, 57 minutes in it because people will feel like they're not getting value for their ticket. But then after it kind of blew up and it was getting successful and we were all over the television, then they came back, oh, actually, no, I think it's a really good idea to have this. Yeah, we're totally behind this. And now we've had people coming to us and saying that they have used hosts as an example in meetings with execs, like, hey, my movie might only be 70 minutes long, but there was a movie that was 56 minutes long and it did good. So host has been used for all manner of things, including found footage, because, again, Hollywood execs like to say, oh, it's found footage. Have you ever thought about doing this as a conventional movie? I hear that a lot. And like, I hear that a lot, so I don't know what other people are hearing. And I'm like, what? Why am I in this meeting? I'm in this meeting because you like toast. That's why I'm in this meeting. Do you not think I could do it again? The whole looking down on found footage is even worse than people looking down on horror, because it's the horror community sometimes that looks down on found footage, when for me found footage is the distillation of everything I love about horror. Fear can only be generated by authenticity. If you feel like what you're watching is authentic, you can actually feel scared for the characters, and not just for the characters, for yourself, because you feel like this is real. But when you watch the Blair Witch Project for the first time and they're using their real names, you're like, oh my God, I'm worried for these people, because I feel like they can get hurt, and therefore if they can get hurt, I can get hurt for watching this. It's like a snuff movie. And again, like I'm in these meetings and people say, oh, do you really want to do a found footage movie? And I say to them, look at all the most successful horror movies of all time, Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch Project, like what? It's found footage. Found footage is why it works, why it grabs the public consciousness, and because people think it's real, so they tell other people, you need to watch this scary, scary movie. And it's the same with Host. We made people think it was real. We captured the zeitgeist by making it about Zoom and about the time we were currently in. And that's what me and Rob have ever wanted to do, just make a film that feels like it's captured lightning in a bottle.
I've had similar conversations about Shelby Oaks, because Shelby Oaks isn't found footage, but it utilizes aspects of it, and there's aspects of it that also utilize pseudo documentary, like Lake Mungo.
Yes.
And I think a lot of filmmakers, especially directors, they get worried about that being their calling card or something, like they can't show off later. Like if they try to go into a meeting and say, well, I made a feature, can I direct Insidious 7? And they're like, well, that was a found footage movie though, like, can you really do the blah blah blah? And I've heard that a lot from filmmakers sometimes. That's a concern of theirs. When it comes to found footage, like if it's great, I actually love it. If it's like great, a bad found footage movie can be tedious, but like there's been there was one called Phoenix Forgotten that was like a documentary found footage-esque kind of mashup that I thought was pretty damn good, actually. I saw that in theaters. I was the only person there. It's produced by Ridley Scott, which is weird.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? He just like took a break from Alien Covenant to make this little thing. When it's really good, I think it can be really effective, and that's why approaching like the Paranormal Paranoids videos that we did for Shelby Oaks, there's no trickery in those videos. They were shot on tape. Actually like on tape, and then I put them into my old fucking iMac from like 2007 or 2006. I actually used a FireWire cord, connected fucking camcorder to the iMovie, and sat there and clicked import, and I forgot how tedious it is to import old footage. You literally have to import and watch the entire tape. You can't just click and drag a file. And so I'm sitting there watching this whole tape. And early on, it was funny because, like you mentioned, comments. Before I ever announced any kind of involvement with it, I was reading what people were thinking of the ARG, and somebody had said, oh, man, they shot this on digital and did all kinds of filters, and this just looks so fake. And I was like, I literally shot this on tape. I have done nothing to it. Nothing to it. Literally nothing.
You need to almost film yourself doing that for people to believe it.
I did. I have a lot of behind the scenes. that we'll
Good,
show
good,
on the
good.
Blu-ray. I have tons of behind the scenes of us shooting those tapes. It helped because like early on, it was really just about getting people to notice or take it seriously. It was very hard to describe the film to
Hmm.
investors. Very, very hard. They were like, "What is this? Like a found footage?" No, it's not found footage, but it's found footage, but it's not found footage. It's like very different.
Yeah.
So, people want
And
to
no
have
one's really seen Lake Mungo either, so you couldn't say Lake Mungo because a lot of people haven't seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That sucks. You always have to have the recognizable shit. You have to
Yeah.
say something. It's like, it's a quiet place meets Batman. Like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that, and then, but if you say like it's Lake Mungo meets fucking butterfly kisses, they're like, what are you talking about? I have
I was
no
going to say
idea.
Butterfly Kisses reminds me a little bit of what you're trying to do with Shelby Oaks as well.
Yeah.
Uh, that's another great movie that people
Yeah.
kind of sleep on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did an overlooked review of it last year for Halloween, and it's or maybe that was a year previous. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I've talked with that filmmaker too. I must have drafted Shelby Oaks like 50 times, like just
Wow.
really trying to get it to a place that was good. And we'll be announcing cast soon, but like the actors we got, I am very proud of, and most of it is because they genuinely like the characters and they want to play them.
Mhm.
Has nothing to do with like, oh, you made, a movie that everyone liked, because I haven't. It's entirely because of what's on the page. So when you write, do you, because I know you have at least somewhat of an interest in directing, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so like when you write, do you start to visualize like, oh, I put a cut here if I was editing this, and then that does that inform the rest of the writing?
Yeah, I mean, because pretty much everything that I write, I want to direct myself. It's just worked out that Rob's directed the things that everyone knows. But now, obviously, the confidence coming off the back of Host and Dashcam, which is going to come out soon, um, I kind of want to direct more stuff myself. I'm directing the live action video game Ghosts and got some shorts under my belt and stuff. A couple of things I'm not allowed to talk about just yet. If we have this conversation next week, I could talk about another thing I'm directing with a good friend of ours. But yeah, I always have the cast in mind, and you've probably noticed for a lot of my projects, I'm using the same people again and again and again and again. Those same five girls in different iterations. I'm a massive fan of just using your friends, and it's the kind of magic that made Host work like how it did because they're believable bunch of people. As a friendship group, and they're very talented people, and we've been using them in our shorts for years. So I kind of want to use them forever. I mean, I'm sure there'll be times when I can't use them when I'm talking to a studio and they want someone a little bit bigger. But I'm always having the conversation. These ladies can be those A-list stars if they're just in more stuff. So yeah, I'm always first of all always thinking about what friends of mine can be in my stuff, but also I'm doing something in the near future where I'm probably going to have to look down a slightly more A-list cast, even though these ladies are A-list cast to me. But yeah, I'm always having a cast in mind. I'm always thinking about the director choices, and it kind of some directors don't like it when writers put in like camera movements or like director notes in the script, but I do that because in my mind I'm going to be the one at the end of it directing it.
Sure.
So I like to have it like on the page. I also like to like write musical cues and stuff in there, which you're told not to. Like I didn't go to film school, so I just write how I write. So I put legit songs in there, real songs. This song plays, and if you can't get the music right, you can't get the music right. But I want this script to read like the most exciting, like thing you've ever read. So in my mind, you need this song playing while you're reading it. Again, I'm not going to claim I'm the greatest writer in the world. Everyone has different styles of writing. But I think if you're passionate about what you write, it'll come across on the page.
And another thing you mentioned, that I found interesting was your approach to writing, that you don't necessarily concern yourself as much with the quote unquote rules. So I have to ask you the important question. Do you bold in your slug lines?
No, I don't, but I don't mind when I read other people's scripts and they do. It's like it looks kind of cool, but it's just I'm a slave to Final Draft, and I just go with the formatting that I'm just tab 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 tab. I don't bolden the slug lines at all.
I just love that was a debate. Like I saw like in the screenwriting community, it was just this giant debate. People were freaking out. I was like, who fucking cares, man?
Screenwriting Twitter is insane.
It is, yeah.
I keep out of it.
I observe. I do not engage. I observe. I do bolden the slug lines just because I think it reminds me of like a chapter book where I kind of know like, okay, I like subconsciously my peripheral vision informs me I'm getting to a break or I don't know. I like that. I look back on some of the earliest stuff I ever wrote, and I'm talking about like third grade, because I started writing in third grade, and it was because of Goosebumps books. Like I just became absolutely obsessed with horror because of R.L. Stein, and it's why I have right here.
Oh, nice! Wow, very cool.
Haunted Mask. I have the Attack of the Jack-o'-lanterns. Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, and then over here is a Werewolf of Fever Swamp. But I became obsessed with that because of R.L. Stein. So over here I have writing, and over here I have directing, because Signs got me interested in directing.
Very underrated movie as well, Signs.
Very.
Yeah.
And so in third grade, I was like, okay, well, I need to just make my own Goosebumps books, and I, drew the covers and tried to make, It Came From Beneath the Sink or whatever the fuck. And I got like some kind of award in third grade for like best short story, and I was like, okay, that's interesting, and continued to become obsessed with it. And it was always just like scribbling on notebook paper. And towards middle school, reading became my favorite subject, like reading and writing and language arts and stuff. I was always straight A's. And whenever the teacher gave us a creative writing assignment, I just got so excited. I was like, oh, thank God, I can just make up some shit.
The one thing you're good at, the one thing I was good at as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But when I got to writing, it was like, okay, thank God. And I still have a lot of my old stories. I had this old franchise about Midnight Tag. My friends and I would play Midnight Tag. Which is pretty simple. We would just play tag at night. But I was like, what if this guy was like, I'm going to stalk those kids playing Midnight Tag and pretend to play tag with them, but they won't be able to see me, and then they'll fucking kill us all. So I had like this whole franchise. It was very much around like the I Know What You Did Last Summer years.
Right,
of, like,
okay.
Like guys with
Kevin
hooks.
Williamson type vibe,
Yes.
yeah.
And so I got very into that, and then eventually started doing fan films. And it wasn't really until my late teens and early 20s where I started to kind of actually learn script format, like the actual way to write one. I didn't even know like present tense. I was writing it like it was a fucking novel. It was, prose. It took a long time to kind of switch my head from like writing short stories into like what is actually a good script. Like, what does that look like for someone? And of course, originally, like you were talking about camera direction, like my first few things are very much so like we pan left, we tilt up, like we boom up. I'm describing it.
Yeah.
And if you actually read Ari Aster's Hereditary, that is the most detailed camera direction I've ever seen.
Yeah. He's writing it for himself. He wasn't writing it for the adoring public that he didn't realize would happen off the back of it. He's writing it for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you go to read Midsummer, there's no camera.
Yeah. He knows A24 will release the book of it, so he's like, okay, I need to keep this clean.
For my 2 cents, anything goes. Whatever gets people passionate about what you're writing, just fucking do it.
Totally. And like I think it wasn't until I used, and I'm not sponsored by Final Draft, I have no affiliation with Final Draft, but it wasn't until I got Final Draft that I realized you had to do certain things. And also, I read lots of scripts throughout the years, but it wasn't until I had to write one myself. I actually wrote one in Word once, and I tried to import it into Final Draft, and I realized all the errors I was doing, and just having it in the right format just makes you feel like a real writer.
Yeah.
Because like wow, this looks like someone else's script, so that legit. Because I think one of the things that writers need to know, it doesn't matter how successful you get, you still have that imposter syndrome. You still think, am I good enough? And you will never think you're good enough. It doesn't matter how successful you are. The only people who think they're good enough are assholes. There's always room to learn. Like, you're always learning. As soon as you stop learning, then you've lost, because there's always new stuff to kind of like figure out and learn. And sometimes there may be you find a better way to format something that no one's ever thought of before. And like I said, I'm a big fan of sticking in musical cues. I think Tarantino does it, where he's kind of earned the right to do it. But I just think it makes sense. In my mind, I'm thinking about the end products. I'm thinking about, this song would be so awesome if it was in this bit. And yeah, it may scare a studio or production company, like, we can't afford the rights. This is half the budget. But just give me that one thing. Let me put it in the script. We can argue about it later, but it will read really well.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about. If you can capture authenticity, or even the illusion of authenticity, then you can create fear. You can foster an environment where fear can grow, and that's what the Blair Witch Project does so well. And like, people don't realize. And again, sorry, I talk a lot about the Blair Witch Project.
That's okay. I got to see it in theaters. I
mean, that's incredible. The Blair Witch Project it doesn't have any violence in it. It's all off screen. You don't see any monsters, and just so the horror happens in your head. And if the horror happens in your head, that means it doesn't matter if you're watching it, because that horror will follow you home and will be with you in your head for your entire life. So psychological horror for me is a lot more interesting and long lasting than just gore and guts on screen, because that just survives for as long as you're watching it. But something like the Blair Witch Project, which in your head, and Paranormal Activity to some extent, it lives on with you forever. And I think the Blair Witch Project is still as effective now as it was back then. I screened the Blair Witch Project about a year ago on VHS in a cinema. I projected it from a VCR to the big screen, because you have to watch it the way the filmmakers intended, I think, or the way I like. And it still scared the shit out of people.
So in '99, I'm like 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like everyone in my fucking school is like, "Have you heard about this Blair Witch thing? What is this?" Everyone starts talking about it. You hear Blair Witch so many times that it becomes real to you, even if you don't know what it is. And of course, in '99, we're not all jumping on our smartphones and looking up Blair Witch and seeing, fucking whatever studio it was, New Line Media releases Blair Witch to theaters or whatever it is, And so
as soon as you see Blumhouse's Blair Witch, it'll lose.
Exactly. And so we all had this sort of reaction to it, and it felt like wrong or something, like there was something was wrong with the movie. Like, and so that kind of just like
all the best found footage films feel like snuff movies.
Yeah.
Like, because should I really be watching this?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what people said about Host as well. Like it felt like they were watching a snuff movie, because they'd been on Zoom like all day at work, and then they're on another Zoom, so it feels like you're talking to your friends. So Dashcam is coming out in June theatrically. I would love it if there was no trailer, or no proper poster for it. It just dropped, because obviously it was shown in a few film festivals, but not many. I would love people not to know a lot about it and just go to the cinema and just see. That's why I really appreciate what Jordan Peele's doing with Nope.
Yeah.
He's given us just enough. And even the trailer that was released, which I tried my best not to see, but obviously going to the cinema, there's Nope trailers. You still don't know what it's about. And I love that. I love that trailer. People are just like, oh, it's aliens. I don't think it's aliens. I think
I have no
that's
idea.
way too obvious. I think it's something else.
To me, a discussion like this is super valuable because one of my biggest goals with the channel, but also forthcoming with the Kickstarter campaign, is really to just kind of give people an actual eye into the creative process and less of the, the Hallmark card quotes that you hear so often
Oh
from
yeah.
people who've gotten stuff done. I think a lot of people, when they get something made, they almost feel protective about the fact that they have now been ushered into the space. And now that they are in the space, I don't want to risk getting out of the space. And so they kind of say things in these very vague ways. Just make your own
Yes.
film. Just go out and make a movie. What the fuck does that mean, man?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so, I really respect you because you're one of the few that has just been so open and honest and transparent about their experiences and helpful. And you've also done so many things. It's not just that you've written a horror film. You've got Ghost, this video game coming out. So like, how did that kind of come about?
Well, I think it's because of the confidence that you have when you make something like Host and you realize that something that you've been aiming for your entire life suddenly happens. Everyone is loving something you've done. So it gave me potentially unearned confidence that I could do something else in the horror realm and maybe it could happen. So yeah, it was actually on Halloween, this very dramatic, on Halloween 2020 when Host was in cinemas in the UK and over like 150 screens in the UK. And I was there in the Q&A with the ladies from Host, and I was just thinking, oh, I love this. I want to keep doing this somehow. And I was in lockdown. I was playing a lot of full motion video games from limited run games on my Switch.
Yeah.
And I was like, this makes sense. If I could somehow magic up a game that was live action, maybe limited run games could release it somehow. I didn't know anything about this. I'll find a games developer who'll help me do it somehow. And yeah, I'll just do this. And the day after, weirdly, or after I had that thought in my mind, so November the 1st, 2020, a games developer randomly DM'd me on Twitter and said, hey, do you have any ideas for a horror game? We've just made a couple of horror games that did well. We're looking for more. And I was like, let's jump on Zoom right now. Jumped on Zoom.
Because you're somehow in my brain. Like you.
Yeah, exactly.
In my brain.
it was just really crazy. And I went, okay, I've got this idea for a game. I want it to only work at 10 p.m. in your local time zone. It can only work at 10 p.m. because the conceit is it's a live TV show that starts at 10 p.m. And I want people, like the authenticity with fan footage movies, I want people to really think they are there at 10 p.m. because it is 10 p.m. They try and play at 9:59, it will not work. And can technology do that? And they're like, yeah, but why would you want to limit when people play your games? Because that's cool. To me, it's just cool. Why not? So then I convinced the ladies from Host, all of them, like, hey, I've got this other crazy idea. Are you involved? And before I could finish the sentence, they're like, yeah, of course we want to do this. So yeah, it all came together. And then I was like, oh, I felt like everything I did like worked. So I was like, I need someone to build this creature for me called the Long Lady. So I went to Trevor Henderson, who is the creator of Siren Head, and said, hey, Trevor, we've been following each other for ages. Big fan of yours. And he said, he's a big fan of mine. Can you design the Long Lady for me? So Trevor Henderson, Siren Head's Trevor Henderson did that for me. And then I was like, okay, I need someone to make it now. So I went to Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which of course was my absolute. It was just a pipe dream at that point. But I was on a roll, and obviously, since you heard what I did with Birdemic 2, I felt like I could do anything. So I just spoke to Jim Henson's Creature Shop and just said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. We've barely got any money, but can you help? And they said, oh, what you're offering is approximately 10% of what it would cost to make this, because it's a lot of time. And I said, okay, just think about it. Just think about it. And I explained to them how cool it was going to be and what the real story of the Long Lady was, which nobody knows besides Jim Henson's Creature Shop. And they came back to me the next day, said we've discussed it, we want to be involved. So they did it. Like I got a massive parcel through the post from LA, from the creature shop, of this massive creature.
Wow.
Postage was astronomical, but it was worth it. So ever since then, or for the last 8-9 months, we've been filming this video game, this live action video game, and it's coming out in the summer, and it's unlike anything anyone's seen. I mean, it is a bit like Night Trap, to be fair. It's like, but Night Trap, if you could do it with today's technology and with the cast of a popular horror movie.
No, I mean, all that sounds amazing. Is it being put? Is it through limited run?
Limited run are releasing it on all formats. Yeah.
So I am friends with them, and I'm looking at 2 full shelves of limited run Switch games over there. So I will, without a doubt, have Ghosts and play it.
I'll send it to you, man. I'll send you the collector's edition.
Amazing. Thank you. I can't wait to play it. That all sounds so cool. And like what I gleaned from it is that you essentially, like, in your head, you made a list of like the tops. I want to get Trevor Henderson for the creatures. I want to get the Henson. I want to get them. And you just went for it. And you came in there and, like you said, sales pitch, and you made it sound cool. And even when they were like, that's not a lot of money, you're like, but isn't this fucking awesome? They're like, you know what? It is. I think that a lot of people, especially when you're I can't speak for other companies, but like when you've done so much, and obviously the fucking Henson name is iconic. When you've done so much, at some point, I imagine you start looking for things that just interest you, that you're like, that sounds fucking awesome. I want to be a part of that. Money is not as much of a concern probably. And so it's more just like, what can I get emotional about? And like, that just sounds great.
It's great. And it's established my relationship with the Henson company as well, which is, you guys will see it's bearing fruits for other things in the future. But yeah, it's to be honest, ever since Host, it's been great. I'm on the high of a roller coaster. I'm waiting for it to kind of dive back down into reality, which I'm sure will happen anytime soon. But for now, it's a fun ride.
It's really good to maintain a level head, and I think you're like the diamond example of that, of just someone who legitimately is really good at their craft, and you just want to make cool stuff. You're not like, well, it's time to do a bunch of cocaine off of an elephant or something. Like you're like, I'm just gonna make cool fucking movies.
I always say I'm a horror fan first and then a filmmaker. Like I care about horror so much. I care about horror fans. I don't want to put shit out there into the world. I want to make films that I want to see. And I say this to people as well. I want to make films for the 15-year-old kid who's just broken up with his first girlfriend, who is going to the cinema to kind of get their mind off their life. And they sit there for 90 minutes or 56 minutes and they watch a movie so full of wonder. They leave that cinema not remembering her name. They're just there saying, "Oh my God, I've just seen this incredible film. It's made me think differently about my life. I'm going to tell everyone about it." That's the kind of movies I want to make. The movies that kind of inspired me and just make me excited. And I still get so excited about horror. Like every single day I wake up and I'm so excited about like horror and the stuff I'm making. And I always want that feeling to happen.
Well, it shows in your work and also in your personality and demeanor that you're obviously very interested in. So it was great talking to you in this way.
You too, man.
I can't wait to play Ghosts, and thank you also for like being cool with just like being involved technically in something that also promotes my Kickstarter. It's like, it's very,
nice.
Like
it's a really cool project. I'm so excited for that as well.
Thanks.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, guys, please do check out, if you've never seen Host, check it out. When Dashcam comes out, check it out. When Ghost comes out, check it out. And he's got a billion other things he'll announce eventually, and all of them should be seen and played and digested by your eyeballs. Thank you so much, Jed, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Cheers, Chris.